Now that the season's over for Mike Woodson and Indiana basketball, it's time to dominate the transfer portal.
You are Locked On Hoosiers, your daily podcast on the Indiana Hoosiers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome in. It is the Locked On Hoosiers podcast. I'm your man, Jacob Goins. I appreciate you being here, making this your first listen each and every day. We are, of course, a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, which is your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. New customers join today, and you'll get $200 in bonus bets if your first bet of $5 or more wins. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. Thank you so much for being here, making this your go-to spot for all things Indiana athletics. If you're on the YouTube channel, thank you so much for watching. Like the video, subscribe to the channel. 2 taps. It's easy. It's free. And folks, we are 9 subs away from 1,900 subscribers, making the push to that, then making the push to 2,000, and you can become a part of this wonderful family here at Locked On Hoosiers. So thank you so much for that. If you're on the audio version, thank you so much for being there as well. Turn on notifications wherever you get us because we're free, never have to pay, and you don't want to miss any time we post a new episode. So be sure you do that as well. It's the offseason for Indiana basketball, and there's so many things that we need to talk about. But one thing that we mentioned yesterday that I wanted to take a little bit of a deeper dive into, the portal has to be dominated by Indiana this season. And I mean, they've got to go and get some dudes to replace some guys that are going to be leaving and replace some and really just boost this roster. So that's on the schedule for the show today. We'll also take a look at the Indiana women, who are a 4 seed in the NCAA tournament. They'll be hosting right here in Bloomington, taking on Fairfield in the first round. That'll be coming up in just a couple of days as the NCAA tournament for the men and women get going this week for March Madness. So we'll talk about that. Then we'll break down both brackets a little bit. Look at what the Big Ten did. Look at who got snubbed. There's a lot to say on that as well. That's what's on the show today for you here on Locked On Hoosiers. Indiana basketball, the men's team, not competing in the tournament once again, right? They are out of it. It feels wrong. It's not right. There's so many things to change here, but we mentioned this yesterday about the roster just not being where it needs to be. And this was a talented team. I said that all year long. I don't know how many times I said that. This was a talented Indiana team. They just didn't live up to the hype. They just didn't live up to their expectations, and it took them way too long to get going, to get better, to gel as a team. And one of the major issues was the problems they had back in November. They still have the same problems in January and February. That's an issue for me. And that's a coaching problem. That's a Mike Woodson issue, where if your team's not getting better as the season goes on, that's on you. That's not on them. That's your problem to fix it if they're not playing their best basketball and they continue to make the same mistakes over and over and over again. And that's exactly what happened with this team. But you start looking at what this team's going to look like next season. I mean, man, it's going to look completely different, right? You have Xavier Johnson and Anthony Walker gone because they have no more years. Xavier Johnson's been playing college basketball for 17 years. He's gone. Kel'el Ware, if he's smart, he'll go to the draft. I mean, he could come back, sure, but why would he at this point? I mean, he played so well this season. They're going to take him in the NBA. Somebody's going to take a shot and just make him even better than he already is, which is exciting to see, and I can't wait to watch that. You have Anthony Leal and Trey Galloway, who announced that they are coming back, so I think that's a plus, right, especially with Trey Galloway. That's a big, big addition, really, and I call it an addition because you didn't know if they were coming back, and now they are. And so I count that as an addition, and I'm going to keep preaching this until we get a decision on it. This staff better be working on Malik Reneau. You better find him some money. You better find him some confidence. You better find him more playing time if that's even possible. I don't care what you have to do. You better keep Malik Reneau. Was he perfect this season? No, not in any way. But he was a really good player. Probably your second best player all season long behind Kel'el Ware. you better find a way to keep him because you have nobody coming through the door right now. You have no big man set for next year besides Malik Reneau. You have nobody in the portal yet. You have no high school recruits, thanks to Liam McNeeley pulling his letter of intent. You have nobody coming in. He is your best player right now if Kel'el Ware does decide to leave. Indiana's got to find a way to keep him around, do whatever it takes. And yeah, it's going to take a little green stuff to keep him here. And you know what? That's the name of the game. So figure it out if you're Indiana. You have Mackenzie Mbako. I think he hangs around. He got better as the year went on, but I don't think he's ready yet. I wouldn't think he'd leave either. You know, you've got guys like Caleb Banks and CJ Gunn and even Peyton Sparks where, I don't know, I'm not really thinking, I don't think they come back. And even if they do, they're not going to play. They didn't play this year. So I don't really see them playing a whole lot next year either. So what does that tell us? That tells us we need some dudes out of the portal, especially since our high school recruiting, it was bad already. And then Liam McNeeley kind of gave us the middle finger and walked away. And I get it. That's on him. He's doing his own thing. And that young man deserves to do what he thinks best is for him. But Indiana is like, oh, crap. Now what do we do? Right? And rightfully so. We're stressing because we have nobody coming in a recruiting class, which the fact that I just had to say that is unbelievable. But you've got to go dominate the transfer portal. You've got to go get another big man. You've got to go get 2 or 3 guards. You've got to go get a 3-point shooter or 2 or 3. You've got to go get some depth on this team. Because if everything plays out like we think it's going to, you're not going to have anything on this team. And next year is going to be brutal if you don't go and get some of the biggest and best guys out of the portal. Now, Indiana's reached out to a couple of guys. They've reached out to Trey Dickens, the guard from Canisius, who averaged 15 points and shot 36% from 3 this season. Cool. We like that. They also have reached out to Michael Ajayi, who averaged 17 points, almost 10 rebounds, and shot 47% from 3 this past year at Pepperdine. So Indiana's reaching out to some guys. And I will say this. When you start reaching out to these mid-major players who have great stats, you just have to be careful because you don't know how it's going to translate when they get to the next level, when they get to that big-time, big boy basketball. We've seen it already, right? We've seen it here in Indiana. We've seen it around the Big Ten. You see it around college basketball. But the fact that we're even reaching out to these guys is a good sign. And they're considering us. Now, there's some big-time schools that are a part of this too, and that's what the fun part of the offseason is keeping up with all this stuff and tracking it. But we've got to dominate the transfer portal. I'm saying make some big-time splashes to where people say, whoa, look at what Indiana brought in. Wow, that's going to be a solid team next year. That's what Mike Woodson has to do. You wanted an extra chance. You wanted one more shot at this thing, Mike Woodson. You got it, and you better take advantage of it right now in the offseason with the transfer portal and become transfer portal kings. Coming up on Locked On Hoosiers, we'll take a look at the women's tournament. The Hoosiers, the Lady Hoosiers, are 4th in their 4 seed in the NCAA tournament. We'll take a look at that, what their path could look like. Also, an update on Mackenzie Holmes as well. That's coming up on Locked On Hoosiers. Today's episode of Locked On Hoosiers is brought to you by Nissan. This week's March Madness bracket highlight is brought to you by our friends at Nissan. Each week, we're picking one team that stands out, a team that's pushed it further than the rest. Just like any of the all-new 2024 Nissan SUVs, these guys were able to take it to the next level. The Yukon Huskies can only be described as an armada. This top-seeded team, it's a hardcore as it gets out there. So it's no wonder they've landed a top overall seed in the NCAA tournament. They also kind of got the shaft when it came to being a number 1 overall seed. Have you seen who's in their bracket? Unbelievable. But they're one of the favorites to win it all, despite 4 of the 6 Power 6 conference champs standing in their way in the East region. It's UConn, Auburn, Iowa State, and also, well, there's one more in there that I'm drawing a blank on, but you see what I'm saying here. 4 conference champs in their bracket. 3 of the last 4 Final Four teams are in their bracket as well. It truly is unbelievable what UConn is having to go through. Illinois, of course, Illinois right here out of the Big Ten. There are 4 conference champs in there, but that's why they're being compared to the Nissan Armada. Take the Nissan Rogue, Nissan Pathfinder, or Nissan Armada and go find your next big adventure. Shop NissanUSA.com. Today's episode is also brought to you by Amazon Fire TV. Look, Fire TV is your destination for sports, from live games to highlights to in-depth analysis. Fire TV offers amazing viewing experiences with smart TVs, as well as the Fire TV stick that you can plug into your existing TV that provides access to millions of movies and TV episodes, as well as free and live TV. Whether it's opening weekend for baseball or the college basketball tournament, you're going to want to have a Fire TV. Fire TV recently created Fire TV channels. Have you checked these out? They're really, really cool. They deliver a constant supply of the latest videos from your favorite sports brands, all for free. It all comes with it. That includes all of us here at Locked On and most of the big pro leagues and college conferences as well. Fire TV channels lets you dive into all the game analysis, highlights, and more to keep up to date with the latest in the world of sports, March Madness, NBA, MLB, and so much more. If you haven't checked out Fire TV channels, I'm telling you, you got to try this out. To learn more, visit www.amazon.com/LockedOnFireTV. Welcome back into Locked On Hoosiers, your first listen each and every day. Appreciate you making that so. Let's take a look at the women's tournament because the Lady Hoosiers, they're actually competing in the NCAA tournament. So congratulations to them. They are a 4 seed in the region, in the first region. Now, they will be playing their first couple games there in Bloomington. They're hosting a couple of games there at Assembly Hall, so that's going to be exciting. Indiana, a 4 seed, along with now. It is unfortunate, and I think a lot of this has to do with how the season ended for this Indiana team, right? It didn't end the way we wanted it to. 24-5 overall, undefeated at home, which is nice, but down the stretch, I say the wheels fell off, but they lost 2 games out of their last 5. They went 3-2 in their last 5 games, and we're all flipping out. We're like, oh no, here we go. This team's in trouble. No, not really. They lost that game to Illinois. They beat Iowa, won at Northwestern, beat Maryland, and then they lost their first game of the Big Ten tournament. But we all know why. They had some serious health issues to their number 1 player, Mackenzie Holmes, who we have an update on, who says she is feeling better, feeling much better is what she says, which is a really, really good sign. And I'll get you the quote for it. You know, she had a knee injury, didn't play a whole lot down the stretch, didn't play a whole lot in the Big Ten tournament, and says she's feeling a lot better heading into the NCAA tournament, which, again, you have to be excited about. She says, I think this past week I've been able to get some much needed rest for my knee, and I've been able to get back out on the floor. I've been practicing, so each day I think I'm feeling more and more confident on it, feeling better on it. So this week has been great for that, the aspect of recovery for my knee. She goes on to say, I would say I'm feeling much different than I was last March versus this March. I think I practiced maybe once or twice leading up to the Miami game after the Big Ten tournament. So now I'm in practices doing pretty much everything. So I'm feeling a lot better, which is a great thing for me. So that's got to make us feel pretty good, right, about this Indiana team. Now, she's starting to feel better. She's in practices. She's in the routine. That is something that we have to be really excited for when it comes to this Indiana squad because they've got some serious potential. Now, I've told you all year long, I think that we're higher than a 4 seed. I think we're better than a 4 seed. I think we got kind of the short end of the stick. But I also think that there was a sour taste in the mouths of a committee because of we only played the 1 game in the Big Ten tournament and we had some injury questions. So I understand that. I do. I get it. But I still think we're better than a 4 seed, but it is what it is. What does suck is we got put in the South Carolina region. That's not any fun. Look, that's a good South Carolina team. That's a South Carolina team that is threatening to win the national championship. They're one of the betting favorites to win the national championship. So here's the thing, though. People say this all the time this time of year, and I completely agree. To be the best, you have to beat the best. And you're going to have to beat them at some point, so why not do it early? And that's exactly what Indiana is going to have to do. They're up against the 13-seeded Fairfield, who is 31-1 overall. Goodness gracious, sorry about that. Fairfield, 31-1 overall. Holy smokes. I've said this numerous times too. I don't care who you are. I don't care what team you are. I don't care what opponents you play. I don't care if you're playing middle school ball. If you win 30 plus games on a college basketball season, you lost one game, that's strong. That's really strong. Now, we know the disparity when it comes to the women's game, which is getting better. It used to be like this. I mean, it used to be a massive gap in the women's game, but that's getting slimmer and slimmer by the year. But a 31-1 Fairfield team is really, really impressive as the 13 seed. So Indiana has that first. They'll play that. Then if they win that, they'll play the winner of 5-seeded Oklahoma and 12-seed Florida Gulf Coast. My guess would be that Oklahoma squad, that's a tough Sooners team. They would play that in the second round, and then ultimately will most likely play South Carolina in the Sweet 16. You also have Nebraska in there. You have Ole Miss and Marquette in there. You have Oregon State as the 3 seed in there. Notre Dame is the 2 seed. That's a tough looking bracket for Indiana, but I think the only team that you got to worry about is South Carolina. Worry about your first 2 games and then step in there and try to beat the Gamecocks. It's going to be tough. That's a tough matchup for us because Mackenzie Holmes is good, but man, South Carolina's got some big girls in there that are really going to give us some problems, I think. Don't worry about that right now. You got to get there first. And if we're able to beat South Carolina, then yeah, I think we got a really good chance to win the national championship. I don't think it's fair we got put in that bracket, but it is what it is. You look around this tournament, South Carolina's a 1 seed, Iowa's a 1 seed with Caitlin Clark, USC's a 1 seed, and then Texas is the other 1 seed. The Big Ten's got some representation in here. I mentioned Nebraska's in our bracket. You also have Michigan State in our bracket. Other Big Ten teams in here. There's a couple of more jumping around. Iowa, of course, as a 1 seed. And there, Michigan as a 9 seed is in the NCAA tournament for the women. How about Ohio State as a 2 seed? That's a really impressive squad. We've seen them this year. That's a really, really good squad. They're in the USC bracket. I think Ohio State's got a really good chance to make a run to the Final Four. How about this potential Sweet 16 matchup, though? They could be playing UConn in the Sweet 16. How much fun would that be? You also have Iowa State and Maryland playing, so that's fun. Maryland out of the Big Ten playing Iowa State to start. So really good representation for the Big Ten. I think we should be really impressed on the women's side of things. And you have some good play-in games as well. So look, I'm really excited for the women's tournament. I am. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. I think it's going to be fun for us as the Hoosiers, watching them compete, but also just watching some of these really good games across the next couple of weeks on the women's side. Having the women's games on and the men's games on at the same time is going to be a lot of fun. Indiana, a 4 seed. They'll be playing in Bloomington. They'll be playing Fairfield. Okay, that game is coming up on, let's see, that game is coming up on the 23rd, which is Saturday. So that game will be on Saturday. That'll be going on same time as all the other men's games, other women's games as well. So that's going to be exciting. Indiana, a 4 seed in the women's tournament. And I think they got a pretty good path to the Sweet 16. And then, look, you got to beat the best. And we'll see if they can do it. Coming up on Locked On Hoosiers, final segment, we'll take a look at the rest of the bracket. We'll take a look at the men's bracket as well and kind of what's going on over there. And look, there's some teams that should be really upset there. I know we're not in it as Indiana, but we'll take a look at the Big Ten. We'll also take a look at who got the shaft a little bit as well. That's coming up on Locked On Hoosiers. Today's episode of Locked On Hoosiers is brought to you by FanDuel. Look, it's that time of year where you've got to be a part of FanDuel, man. Where else do you want to be when you're watching the NCAA tournament? You may as well be having a little extra fun on the side and watching these games with a little bit more of a little bit more at stake, if you will. Say goodbye to busted brackets because FanDuel lets you bet on every game of the tourney. Whether you're betting on big upset of a 1 seed, or picking that 1 seed, it's time to go dancing on America's #1 sports book. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. That's $200 to use on point spreads, money lines. You can even pick who's going to win it all. You got an upset pick? Throw $5 on them in that first round. If you win, FanDuel is going to give you $200 for it. Just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to bet on college hoops until they cut down the nets. That's FanDuel.com/LockedOn, LOCKEDON. Final segment on Locked On Hoosiers. Appreciate you being here. If you're on YouTube, like the video, subscribe to the channel. We are pushing towards 1,900 subscribers and then 2,000. So thank you so much. And if you're on audio, be sure you turn on notifications so you never miss an episode of Locked On Hoosiers. Want to look at the men's tournament for a second because, look, the NCAA Tournament Committee, I'm just going to say it. They should be ashamed. They should be ashamed. They should be embarrassed with what they released on Sunday night for Selection Sunday because none of it makes sense. None of it does. You have all these metrics. You've got the net rankings and you've got Torvik and you've got KenPom and all this crap that they say that they reference throughout the entire year. And then when they get there, they just throw it all out the window and they set the brackets on Wednesday and they just leave it. Conference tournaments have become irrelevant. They've become a waste of time and energy. And I think numerous teams figured that out this week. Illinois figured that out. Auburn figured that out. I think other teams did as well, where they made runs in their conference tournament and it didn't even matter. And then you also had teams who didn't make runs in their tournament, who got beat very early. I look at Alabama. I look at Tennessee out of the SEC. I look at, how about North Carolina out of the ACC, who they did okay, but then yet they still get a 1 seed. Like, I don't get it, man. It just doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. How about Kentucky as well? Like, they use all these metrics all year long. And then when it comes down to the end of it, they just don't even use them. It's unbelievable, man. It really is. But you start looking around, you've got UConn as a 1 seed, Houston as a 1 seed, Purdue and North Carolina. The Big Ten's got some teams floating around in here. We didn't do as well as we could have, I think, at one point this season, but Purdue as a 1 seed is solid. I know we're not excited about that, but it is a Big Ten representative. Wisconsin is a 5 seed taking on James Madison, man. Look, I'm just going to go ahead and tell you, I've got James Madison. I do. I have James Madison to win that game. Nebraska as an 8 seed taking on Texas A&M. Nebraska should be upset. Nebraska should be really, really upset for how they've played so far, how they played in the Big Ten tournament, and their reward as a top 3 team in the Big Ten is an 8 seed overall taking on Texas A&M. Are you serious? I would be so upset if I was Nebraska. And then, congratulations, if you happen to get by a really good physical A&M team, you just get the number 1 seed, Houston, who's been playing dominant basketball for a long, long time. Northwestern's in here. They're a 9 seed up in that Eastern bracket playing FAU to start off. Then they would play UConn. That's a bracket that's got UConn, Auburn, Illinois. We mentioned them, and then Iowa State. Illinois playing Morehead State. Then they'd play the winner of BYU or Duquesne. Then they'd have to see Iowa State maybe. I mean, it's just not a great draw for them. How about this game? First game of the tournament, first game of the day on Thursday morning. It's number 8 Mississippi State and number 9 Michigan State. Going to be a fantastic game. I'll admit it's going to be a great game. But I've told you this. Michigan State is not an NCAA tournament team. They're not. They're not an NCAA tournament team. I don't think they're good enough. I don't think they have the resume to. I think they got put in there because of their name and their head coach. That's why they're in there. I firmly believe that. For the money that they bring in. It's all about the money. And you can't tell me that Michigan State has done enough to be a real legitimate NCAA tournament team. That aside, it will be fun to watch them, which is why they're in there. They're going to be taking on Mississippi State in that very first game on Thursday. Very excited to watch that one as well. So overall, I think there's some really good teams in here. I think there's good matchups in here. Man, you had 5 bid stealers in this NCAA tournament for the men. And by bid stealers, I mean 5 teams that won their conference tournament that were not previously in the NCAA tournament. So if they didn't win at all, they were not going to make the tournament. So then everybody got bumped down. A team like Indiana State got they got hosed, man. They did. Indiana State should be in the tournament. I believe that. I think they're good enough to be in this tournament, but because of those bid stealers, because of teams like Michigan State who just had to be in there, a team like Indiana State doesn't get a chance to go dancing after a really, really good season. So, look, this is my favorite time of the year. I'm excited about it. We're still going to cover a ton of Indiana on this show, but I do want to still cover the men's tournament a little bit. We'll obviously cover the women's tournament with the women, Indiana being in there, and hopefully they can make a run in March Madness as well. So all of that over the next few weeks, plus transfer portal updates on basketball and also football updates as well. So much going on around Bloomington. Excited to talk to you and have you along for the ride. Until next time, Hoosier fans, stay safe, and I'll talk to you later.